Good evening and welcome to Oh, the Wonders of Google Forms. I'm going to be talking to you tonight about how to put data from students in a Google form and how to collect data with that form, and also how to use something called Google Keep to also collect data on students. So all of tonight's session and all of our future sessions are going to be found in my new Google Plus community called PD and PJ's Instructional Technology webinar series. So I did put the link in the chat, so you'll be able to see that if you'd like to join, and all the recordings will be in here. So let's go ahead and look at a behavior chart of a student. Of students that I might want to collect from my classroom. So this is what the behavioral chart will look like ahead of time. I'm going to go ahead and click on the eyeball. This is a preview so that you can see what the behavior chart would look like that you would be filling out on a student. So first of all, you would put your name, because this might be shared with other teachers or special ed teachers. You would put the date that behavior occurred and the time. And then these would be the names of the students in your class, so you can just check off which student that is. And then the location, which is a drop down, would be the location that the behavior is occurring. From there, these are the behaviors, or there might be something other than what's listed there. So there is the other, where you can type in there what it is. And as you can see, below that would be the consequence. So what did you do as a result of that behavior, or what happened as a result of that behavior? And then if the behavior was resolved, I would click yes or no, depending. And depending on how I answer, that's going to take me to the next question. So if the behavior was resolved, it would lead to when it was resolved and then any comments that I might have, and then I can click submit. If the behavior was not resolved, I can go ahead and click next, and I can put whatever comments I need to there and click next. And then it's done to hit submit. Okay, so that is what a behavior chart might look like that you can create using Google Forms. So let's actually walk through and pretend we're going to build one. So the first thing you want to do is go to drive.google.com. This is where you would create your form. You would sign in with your school Google account and click on New Google Forms. When you do that, it's going to open up a form, and we're going to go back to this one. As you can see here, these are my list of questions that I would have. We're going to go through and I'm going to show you how to build each one. Now, I also have it named. So if I name it here and click up here, that's going to be the name of my form. So you can name it whatever you want to. This folder is going to allow me to move it into whatever folder I want to. So if you don't have that form in a particular folder and you're trying to keep everything organized, you can go ahead and just move it to that folder, and then your forms are organized. So we're going to go ahead and build this. So we're going to start off with questions. And in our question section, we have the name or title of our form. And then below that can be a description. So you could always fill this out. If you're going to be giving this form to teachers to fill out, you can just give a brief description of what your form is. And then below that, the reason why I stuck name here, and if you notice that these are all the different types of questions, name is how I started it off, and that's going to give me a short answer text. The reason why I put name there is because you might not be the only person that's filling out this form. Maybe you've created it for other people to fill out, so the teacher would just put her name or his name here. Now below that is a date question. So as you can see in my list of types of questions, I have one that is for a date. Time might be something that you want to have data on the time that the behavior occurred, because maybe you are trying to see if there's a pattern in the times that the behavior is occurring. So there is also a time question that you can add here. You can make every single question required if you want to. That's up to you. And if you want to make it required, you just move the little tab over or shut that off. That's entirely up to you. So below that would be the list of students that you have in your class. So these would be, or maybe all the students that in your caseload that you're working with. So these would be all my different students. And to do that particular question, it's just a multiple choice, as you can see. So the teacher or you would just be marking off one of those students. Below that is a location, because again, maybe this is data you're trying to track as far as how often that behavior occurs. Maybe you're finding that there's a pattern in the location of where that student's behavior is occurring. So these could be some possibilities. And this particular question is a drop down. So as you could see before, when I clicked the location question, it gave me a drop down of options. Now below that is the behavior. And the reason why I made this as checkboxes, because maybe there are multiple behaviors that are occurring at the same time. So I could just go ahead and check off. Checkboxes allows me or allows the user filling out the form to check multiple answers. And then you can add an other if you want to as well. And then consequence, again, same thing. There might be multiple items that the person filling out the form would be checking out. And I put the other option because maybe none of these consequences happened and it was something else that happened. That allows the user that's filling out the form to be able to type in what the other consequence was. Now, was the behavior resolved? This particular question is going to allow me to have that user go to different sections of my form. So I put this question in, but before I did that, I made two different sections, two additional sections of my form. One was just the comments, and then I made another section on when it was resolved. So in order to make sections, you have these options over here. This top one would be to add a question, add a title and description, add an image, add a video, or add a section. So that's what I did. I added two sections, and then you can title them if you want to. I can go ahead and title this resolved. And then I can title this one unresolved. Now, when I do this particular question, was the behavior resolved? What I did over here was I added, if you look and see, I could do a continue to next section, or I can go to whatever section I want to. Section 2, which is unresolved. Section 3 is resolved. So for the answer of yes, I want to go to section 3 of resolved. If it's a no answer, I want to go to section 2 unresolved. Okay, and then you should probably make this required so they do fill this particular piece out. So I'm going to turn that on for required. So after section 1, we're continuing to next section. Now, section 2, if the person put it was unresolved, they're going to fill this out. And after section 2, once they fill that out, they're just going to submit the form. Okay. And then on section 3, if the behavior was resolved, what time was it resolved, and any comments that you might want to add, and then that particular form is done. So I want to show you a couple things that when you decide you are going to share this form with other teachers to fill out, you want to go up here to the top and click Send. Send allows me to take and click the link, and this is going to be the same link every single time for that particular form, and I can also go here to shorten it. So this is the link that I would copy and paste and give to teachers. This is also the link that you would have to fill out your own form if this is something that you're going to be tracking certain data on students. You can automatically collect email addresses in the form if you want to, meaning every time the person fills out the form, it automatically collects their email address. The other thing that you can do, if you're the person that's always filling out the behavior chart on particular students that you work with, you can always go up to the eyeball and fill it out yourself. So I'm going to say that the behavior occurred yesterday, and then I'm going to fill it out that the behavior occurred at 9:10 in the morning. Bruce Willis was the student that was doing the behavior. The location was in a classroom. The behavior was out of seat and talking back. The consequence was we redirected the student. Was the behavior resolved? Yes, it was. So now I'm going to click on Next, and you can see there's a little asterisk next to the fact that this is a particular question that must be answered. It's a mandatory question to be answered. So now I'm going to click Next. So when was it resolved? It was resolved right away. So we're going to say it was resolved by 9:15. And any comments? Student did well with redirection. And then I hit Submit. Okay, and I'm allowed to submit another response if I want to, but I'm just going to close out of this tab and I'm going to go back to my behavior chart. And we're going to see that in this particular behavior chart, I'm going to go over to responses. And now I have a record of every single time I or anyone else has filled this out. So it lets me know the dates, the times, the students, the location, the behavior, and the consequence, and if it was resolved. So all this information is tracked for me in here. Now, if you can see, I have a summary of my students, or I can go to individual and see the particular behavior per individual student. This also allows me to take this information and put it in sheets. So I can go to view responses in sheets. That's going to open up my behavior chart in a Google spreadsheet, and it allows me then, if I want to collect even more data. Like if I wanted to create some filters, maybe I wanted to do filter on the location of when it was occurring with my students, or the filter of the behavior. So you can filter all of these. You always have it time stamped of when the form was filled out, and any other information. This is all collected for you. So that is one way to collect data on a student. And again, that is within Google Forms. So there's a lot of ways that you can collect data on Google Forms. So you might be using Google Forms and questions such as the text questions would be used to collect names, phone numbers, email addresses. Maybe you want text questions to be scores on assessments or quizzes. So there might be times where you're using a form to collect data just on the maybe Lexia scores for every time the student participated in a Lexia activity, what their score was at the end. Your paragraph type text questions would be if you wanted to have a comment section, if you want to talk about activity notes, if you want to create a discipline log or a journaling sheet. That's where your paragraph text questions would come into play. Multiple choice questions will, again, allow you to choose one choice. You can use other if you want to, and it's used for lists with only one answer, or such things like yes or no questions. Lists are a great way to do a one choice. It gives you a drop-down menu, but it also allows you to direct them to certain portions of your form too. So kind of like how I sectioned up and then did a redirect, that's what a list can do. And they're also used for yes or no, and possible uses for a list would be a student's name and a note, a type of activity, a reason for a referral, maybe a list of staff who recorded something. So that would be your list type question. Checkboxes will allow you to have more than one answer. So when we talked about the behavior, your checkbox was good because you could do more than one answer. Now, a rating scale, which we didn't really talk about, but scales are great. So they can be used for things like rubrics or intensity scale. And you can create something for like a 1 through 5 type thing, and you can define each level or you don't have to. So scales are set up and are really good for collecting data as well. Same thing with the grid, the characteristics that you can define each level, and that's used for scale questions and possible uses, again, rubrics, maybe a range of feelings, intensity scales, and so on. So we talked about some of the different types of tools within a Google form, and one would be to add the question, add a title or description. So you can add titles and descriptions for sections of your form if you want to. You can add images and YouTubes, and of course we did a section as well. I showed you how to do that. And again, you can see that in your responses section, you don't even have to make a sheet for this. Your responses show up right within your form. So you can see a summary of all the responses in a graph form or individual. So depending on how you set this up, if you're setting it up for data on just one particular student, you could have a nice summary of just what's going on just with that one student. If you're setting it up by individual responses, page to page, if you're doing this on different students, then you might want to use the option of having it put into sheets as well. And again, this is what responses in sheets look like, so you have an idea of how things are being answered. So possible uses for forms would be a school behavior log, gathering of information from records such as attendance, grades, maybe digital citizenship activities you're doing with students, a check for understanding, or if you're doing things like Readers Writers Workshop and you want to be recording some things in that, you can have your form already ready to go and just be checking off certain things that you're noticing within the activities you're doing with students, and also can be provided for feedback from parents, survey of how, things in your classroom and how they feel about particular things. So Google Forms is a great way to collect all kinds of data on students. This is what a rubric would look like using that scale of 1 through 4, and then this would be a social skills rubric, so you can go ahead and fill that out, rating a 1, 2, 3, or a 4. And then, of course, like I said, these are all the different things to think about when you're using Google Forms to collect student data. So you really want to know ahead of time what that use is going to be. You're going to be collecting data just on one student, multiple students. Why are you measuring, and what are you measuring, and under what conditions? How is that Google form going to be used? How frequent will you measure this? What is the time period of measurement for your comparison? How long are you going to monitor? What is the guiding data question? Do you have any goal criteria and any starting criteria, present level or baseline? So these are some of the things to think about before you actually create your Google form. Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about, we're going to switch over from Forms over to Google Keep. So Google Keep can be found in our apps launcher, And if I go to more, you see Google Keep. So I'm going to open up Google Keep. Google Keep is like a check sheet, basically, of notes that you have taken along the way. So the nice thing about Google Keep is I can use it on my phone. I can install the Google Keep app on my phone. I can use it on a mobile device, such as an iPad or a tablet. And it allows me to take notes at any point in time. As you can see on computer form, I can make a list, I can add a new note with an image, and I can add a new note with a drawing. So if I'm on my phone, I can open up Google Keep and I can actually do a voice note. So I'm going to do a voice note right now. So I'm actually doing a voice note and it's taking a note for me. And when I'm done and not talking anymore, it's going to go ahead and put that note within Google Keep. So I just used my phone to take my note, and here it is. So I have it right away. So you're collecting, if you wanted to voice collect data on particular students in your classroom, maybe you're doing something in reading or writer's workshop, and you're giving some feedback to students or things that maybe that you want to focus on for next time, you can just quickly voice that into a Google Keep note and it puts it there for you.
Actually, I can't do that while the device is locked. To keep going, go ahead and unlock your device.
So this note, just like all my other notes, can be color coded. So if I wanted to take particular notes and color code them, I'm going to just go over here and change color. I'm going to make this blue so it stands out. As you can see, some of my other notes in here are things that I've taken a picture of. So if I'm working with a student in the classroom and maybe there's a particular thing that I want to take a picture of, maybe a student work to analyze that later and it's on that student's screen, I can just go over to the screen and take a snapshot. And again, I'm using this with my phone. So I'm just going to take a snapshot of the screen. And what that's doing, I'm going to click the check mark. It's putting that right into Google Keep. So I just did that with my phone with the Google Keep app. And it put that in here for me. And once I set this up, it should refresh itself in a minute and you'll see the picture. So there is the picture of the note that I just took. As you can see, you can make labels for your notes. So if I wanted to go ahead and label this note, I can go over here to more and I can add a label to it. And maybe that label I want to give it is something I already have. I'm going to call it training. Or I can make a new label name, which will list it over here. Okay. So that's a brief thing on Google Keep and a brief thing on Google Forms. As always, you know that I meet with people from week to week and that you can book me thing that I send out in my emails every Friday. So if you'd like to spend more time working on either Google Keep or Google Forms, please go ahead and sign up. And thank you for either watching live tonight or seeing the archive session.